father. When Roderick, my father's captain of the guard, hadn't been able to get the location of the other desert boys out of the kid, we should have kept him locked up. He would have broken eventually. Kateri, my father snapped, bluntly cutting off my name as the crowd roared around us. Control yourself and your tongue. He pursed his thin lips, ones identical to mine, as he stared down at me. His eyes said what his lips didn't. Be in control or someone else will take control. He drilled that phrase into me as my fighting trainer over the years, but it had been a while since he'd scolded me like that. I crossed my arms and sank back into my seat, pulling my long braid over my shoulder. I tugged at the loose tail, twining the dark strands between my calloused fingers. I was in control of myself. One of my mother's killers stood before me, was on the verge of escaping, and I hadn't leapt into the arena to make him pay for his crimes. I ignored the fact this particular boy would have been too young to take part in the raid that killed my mother and baby brother. He was still a desert boy. Leading the illegal caravan into the city was the least of his crimes. While the desert offers no justice, I do, my father said, turning back to address the boy. Before you are 2 unmarked doors. Behind one is the cart of contraband goods, which will be yours to keep should you choose that door. Behind the other door is one of my pet tigers, which will be released into the arena within moments should that door be selected. The decision is yours and yours alone. But fail to choose, and the tiger will be released. He let his words float around the arena. For the first time, the boy raised his head and faced the crowd. His eyes held my father's for a moment before swinging to mine. There was a pleading weakness in them that made my stomach churn. How could he help bleed the Akron wells dry and then expect pity from those he caused to suffer? He wouldn't find any pity here. I leaned forward and stared him down until he turned away. The boy focused on the doors in front of him. The chains fettering him to the post clanked together as he lifted his arm and pointed to the door on the right. I snuck a glance at my father's face. He always knew which door hid the tiger, and he couldn't hide the upturn at the edges of his lips that would curl into a smile when the accused picked that door. No smile played about his lips. My heart flipped faster than a dune in a sandstorm. I bolted up in my seat. Hot afternoon air grew unbearable in my lungs as I held my breath. The door creaked open to reveal a cart piled with earthen jars full of still-living spiral snails waiting for nobles to use their shells to flavor their water, bolts of spider silk netting fine enough to catch sand and keep it from coming in windows and doors, and clay containers full of nogan nuts and spiked rainberries waiting to be crushed into spices and perfumes. No, I whispered, and then I was shouting it over and over again. The cry was drowned out by the roaring of the crowd. I shook my head in disbelief. The desert wouldn't do this to me. It couldn't. My heart pounded in my chest as my stomach twisted at the thought of the boy walking free. Free to raid our wells, free to attack our guards, free to cause suffering to those left in the city as water rations were cut more and more because of the never-ending drought that had started before I was even born. The boy threw his arms into the air and stomped his feet into the sand in celebration, laughing uncontrollably. It reminded me so much of my mother, of the laugh I would never hear again. The laugh the desert boys took away from me. And they would just keep taking things away unless we stopped them, unless I stopped them. I pulled my sword out of its scabbard. I had one hand on the railing, ready to vault into the arena, when my father's hand shot out to stop me. His fingers wrapped around my arm in an iron-like grasp as he gave me a silencing look. I ground one palm against the searing metal of the railing while the other gripped my sword's hilt. My chest shook with rage. "He's a desert boy," I said through gritted teeth. "We can't let him escape." "Sit down," my father's eyes turned cold. When I was little, I couldn't imagine how anything that icy could exist in the desert. And now I couldn't understand what my father was thinking. But I did know what happened when I disobeyed. Ripping my hand away from the railing, I slid back into my seat and dug the tip of the sword into the floor to keep from staring at the smile on the boy's face. Chunk after chunk of rock chipped away from the crumbling arena. I drilled the blade farther and farther until I couldn't feel the muscles in my arm. "Justice has prevailed," my father shouted. "The boy is free to take the cart and go." Guards moved forward to unshackle the boy. He whooped and hollered and kicked sand into a wide arc as he sped toward the cart. My knuckles turned white around the hilt still in my hands. "There is no justice in this desert," I said. "Perhaps justice has been kinder than we thought, Kateri," my father replied. He motioned, and a figure